All right. Let's get started. Hey everyone. Oh, I have my audio. All right, we should be good now. So hello once again. I think I just realized. So I did a stream last week, and I streamed for about like a little over an hour, and then I went to check the VOD, and it said the VOD wasn't available. And I think what I did is that I don't think I hit the go live button because streaming on YouTube is a little different than streaming on Twitch, and I realized that I needed to either set auto start enabled or I needed to hit the go live button. So I think I just totally botched it and talked to myself for like a little over an hour. But we're learning, and I'll probably touch on that topic again, which the topic last week was kind of knowing the differences between working at a UX agency versus working at in-house product versus a startup versus working at a FANG company. And I'll probably touch on the topic again because I think it's still really important. Because if you're looking for kind of your next UX career, your next UX job or role, it's good to know kind of what you can expect from these companies because they all operate in different ways, and depending on your strengths and what you want to kind of work on, it's kind of good to know what you're going to get yourself into. So anyway, again, my name is Nam. I'm a UX designer, currently working at Amazon, the AWS side of things. I've been in the industry for a little over like 11 years now. I've worked again in the agency world. I've worked in in-house, kind of more long-winded startups, and then as well as now working in a FANG company. So this time is basically hopefully going to be able to help anyone thinking about getting into UX design or thinking about making the jump maybe to their next role. And I'm just going to be, really just trying to be present and available, wanting to just kind of do these live streams and hopefully do them multiple times throughout the week. Right now, it's been once a week, and I'm aiming to at least have them be about an hour to probably max 2 hours. And so I think as I try to do this more often, what I'm hoping for is if there's, more questions or engagement, then I'm probably just going to try to answer the questions within the stream. If it starts to extend past kind of that 2 hour mark, I'll just start to try to keep those in mind and kind of plan for those next sessions to be about those questions that we're not able to get to. But for today, we're going to be focusing on getting your getting your forced UX interview, getting your first UX interview, and this could be for your first interview at any general company, or it could be your next role. Because in any situation, trying to jump to your next role is always fairly stressful. If you're new to UX, it's also probably going to be, compounded because you haven't been in the industry. You're trying to get experience, and every company is trying to hire senior designers, and you're trying to kind of ease yourself in as a junior designer, which isn't always easy. And a lot of times, companies just aren't hiring junior designers. And so, hopefully, the tips today will help get you that at least that first conversation. I have some other videos in my YouTube channel, two at this point, about portfolio presentations, and so hopefully that kind of gets you into your, I'll say, hopefully your final loop. Which as a junior designer, hopefully that's enough to get you into your next role. But again, this time is going to be about helping you kind of take that next step. And so if you have any questions, definitely feel free to drop them in the chat. If I don't get to them, I'll definitely get to them in the comments or whatnot below. All right, so today we're talking about getting in your first UX interview, and a big part of that is going to be about networking. They always talk about it's about who you know, and in some degree it kind of is. I would say it's to a certain degree though. Like it's not like you're going to uh, be the nephew of the CEO and they're just going to instantly just give you a role. That could definitely happen. I've seen it kind of happen in other companies, but I wouldn't say you have to have that type of relationship. So it's not some sort of instant hire you know, opportunity. It's just we're going to be talking about ways that you can network to kind of get your foot in the door. So you don't need to know really higher up people. You don't even really need to know any designers at any of the companies. The goal here is just to get a foot in the door, because usually when I hear networking, I just think of these like super awkward events that you attend and everyone's trying to get hired, and it's just it's very painful. I'm extroverted, and I still would not want to be at those kind of events. So we're not talking about hiring events. We're not talking about these networking hiring events or career fairs or anything like that. Those are very intentional and designed in nature to uh, to basically speed date into a company and get those interviews. I think this plays a part in the big scheme of things, which I'll get into. But today we'll be talking about kind of more so the do's and don'ts of networking and how you can kind of bridge yourself into that. All right. So the big thing that I'm going to be kind of touching on is, uh, you want to focus on being relational, because networking is really just getting you connected with someone on a personal level. And when you're just applying kind of blindly and just hoping that you're going to be picked up by the recruiter, that might work in some situations, but in most cases, from most of my job searches, I've never just been able to be just randomly drawn out of a hat. And, as you get more experience, you're going to have a little more weight within that pool that you just um, stick your resume in. But if you're trying to get that first intro, we're going to kind of talk about how you can do that. Shout outs to my wife for getting me an Amber mug. My coffee is always warm. It's really nice. So the first thing I'll talk to is message your friends and family. When you think about networking, usually you're thinking about like professional network and all that. I would say reach out to your friends and network first, but be intentional and be specific. So what I mean by that is you don't want to do like a wide blast, like you just do like a big friends group saying, "Hey, I need a job. This is what I'm looking for. Is anyone looking for UX design position?" I think that will just kind of fall on empty ears, because you're putting work onto your friends and family for you to you know kind of get that foot in the door. So what you want to try to do is kind of like, less work is going to be the best work in regards to getting other people to help you into these companies. And what you want to do first is, in your job search, as you're looking for these roles, if like you're using LinkedIn or Indeed or anything like that, find the companies that are already hiring, find the roles that you're already looking for, and then you start doing the kind of the backwards research, where you check your LinkedIn, see if you have friends or family that work there. They don't have to be designers. They could be, any role within the company, whether they're higher up or lower. What you're trying to do is just have some sort of personal connection, of which will get you connected to their internal parties, like the recruiting or the HR teams and all that. And that's really your goal. You just want to kind of get that first connection, which I believe, if you prepare for it, then it kind of snowballs into your next few conversations. So again, don't do the wide blasts. Find the role first, and then just try to make it so that your friends and family don't have to put in more work to try to get you in. Because in the end, it's in both of your benefits, because obviously you'll be able to get a role, your foot in the door, get the interview process started, and then you'll be able to land that first gig or your next gig. It's in the employee's benefit, because in most cases, in most companies that I've worked at, there's usually always some sort of referral bonus. And this bonus could be a couple $100, could be a couple $1,000 worth. But again, these referrals are like, it's only a benefit. And even in some cases, you can even get referred by people that don't even know you personally. And I found in some systems, you can actually refer someone that you personally know or that you don't actually know. And this is actually within the system. And so I don't know how they, the recruiting team breaks that and decides whether or not to elevate that role. But depending on the company and how big it is, I've had it where, I could go by the recruiter's desk and be like, hey, my friend's looking for work. And then I put their information, or email them the information. And then quickly after, they're already starting that conversation. And it goes really fast. And so those introductions are really huge. I would just say, as the third point is kind of a warning, is if working with your friends can be really fun. I've been able to work with some of my friends, and depending on the environment, it becomes super energizing, and it's great to just work with your friends every day, physically in the same space. Obviously, this is pre-COVID, but working with your friends is great. I've also had it cripple some friendships, and that is also very painful because you also realize you might be difficult to work with, and that's what I found about myself. And then it's a growing process, but just remember, you know, it sometimes can be difficult working with your friends. But if they don't actually work in the same field or role of UX, then it doesn't really matter. They're in like finance or customer service or a developer. A developer you might work with, but the others less so. So I would definitely tap your friends and family first, and then exhaust that pool first. That way, you kind of have some champions in your court to kind of move you along. I would say for next is when you're in the middle of your job search, you find these roles that you're interested in, you check on LinkedIn, you have no direct, like, what do you call, like, the first degree, um, uh, what does LinkedIn call it? Network? Like first degree people in your network or whatever. Then that's when you want to kind of be mindful of who you reach out to next. And this is when you're reaching out to strangers. You're reaching out to the people that work at the company. Um, I recommend you reach out to recruiters at the company because what I find is that the recruiters at the company, usually a large portion of their role is to fill these roles. And so I've had cases where I reached out to the company and I found that the role was already filled, but there was other roles that they could forward me to. And so this is really huge because again, you're just trying to get that personal connection, and you basically you create a bridge between you and that company for you to be able to have that interaction and work with them. And so I do want to emphasize that, like, you want to work with the recruiters at the company, but I wouldn't say the same for recruiters at like a headhunting company, like some sort of agency that's trying to fill that role. And the reason being is, while most of the companies, I'll say, at least for the one company I worked at where I was on the hiring side and we were actively hiring, we did have the budget to consider people that were outside or that were not uh, received from the hiring agency. But the thing is that I remember the conversations where they were saying like, well, this is a great candidate, but because we got them from this recruiting agency, um, we're going to have to tack on X amount of more dollars, 20K more dollars to bring this person on. And that became a decision point. Now, I think a company will pay the right money for the right candidate, but anything that I think gets in the way of that decision making is just a barrier. So I personally don't like working with recruiters unless I'm um, exhausted and like uh, exhausted all my other options. But I personally would recommend not working with them. But I have talked to some in the past, and I do believe there are good recruiters. But I've also, at least the company when I was working at this other company, like they can be quite shady, and they have some illicit practices to try to kind of sneak in the door, and those are not fun. I think that's a story for another time. But I would say that I wouldn't cross that bridge until you feel like you've exhausted some of these other options. So again, you want to message with the recruiters, and what I mean by messaging the recruiters is that you want to have a really short and sweet LinkedIn message where You're just talking about, hey, um, you know, again, you've already kind of been intentional and specific with your friends and family. You found this role that you are interested in, and what you do is that you apply for the role, and then you send a very succinct, short and sweet message to the recruiter from via LinkedIn, and just tell them, hey, I'm interested in this role. I just applied. Here's a link to my portfolio, my resume. Would love to hear more, and then just end it. If it's too long, you're going to be trying to again giving them too much work to try to like read into your message, and then if you're asking questions during that message, they have to think about it. And just like any other, at least for me in emails, if there is a long email with a lot of questions, it's a burden, and so you're having to like, you know that you have to commit time to it. So again, you try to put as the least amount of work on the people that are going to be working with you to get that next role. um, I actually got this recommendation for when I was laid off from the company name called Ready Talk. It was basically like a long-winded startup, and during the first uh, layoffs, our recruiter who I worked with um, was also laid off, and she gave us a lot of tips. And one of those tips was that short and sweet message. And so I think that um, I tried that in my job search during that time, as well as my future job searches, and it works amazingly well. It's a little crazy, but I think when I calculated it, I want to say like uh, 80% of the companies that I think I reached out to in that method, I at least heard some sort of response. But in my most recent job search, which was in 2019, I think, it was still successful, but I would say that it was like it was either I hear nothing or I hear something. And I guess that's kind of in most cases. But uh, yeah, when I calculated, it was like 80% or something like that. It was just crazy. I'll try to pull up the cello sometime, but it was I have in each of my job searches I have a Trello board where I kind of talk about the ones that I applied to, the ones I've heard back from, and then the different stages, offers uh, and declined. And so one day I'll try to reconstruct that because I'm not sure if I still have it intact, but it's very interesting to think about um, kind of your job search journey. But that's besides the point. That's a big tangent. So when you reach out to the recruiters, the one thing you want to make sure you do is you want to be prepared. You want to be prepared with your portfolio and your resume. Again, you include links to those. If you have a password in your portfolio, make sure that's all included in there so there's no, again, a barrier. So, if you send a short and sweet message and then they have to reach back out to you for the password, you've already probably created a barrier where you decrease the chances that they're going to reach out to you. So for that portfolio on the resume, you want to make sure it's super scannable. Again, like the least amount of effort for that recruiter. And the top three that come to mind in regards to like what you're trying to have them scan for is your process, your quality, and your impact. So they're going to be able to see your process, which is really huge in UX design. They're going to be able to see the quality of your work. So a lot of the what I would say eye candy of the the final visuals and like just the presentation of your work is going to be one that like is going to be huge. I know there was a big uh, thread where someone was mentioning how important it is as a UX designer to make a good experience for your portfolio viewers, and that I think is a big part of that quality. And then lastly, the impact part of it. Make sure you're talking about the impact of your work as a designer. And if that's easy to scan, and where they don't have to read into case studies, you read into paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of what you did, I think that goes a long way. So you reached out to the recruiter, short and sweet message. The portfolio is easy to scan because, again, you want to make that good first impression, and then they can move you along to the hiring manager. Um, and then you got your first interview, hopefully. Now, if let's say the recruiter is unresponsive for any reason, I have heard from other colleagues that some of them like to message designers directly, and I think that works to some degree. But I would say with the caveat that not all designers are going to be living on LinkedIn. When I applied for Amazon, I was reaching out to friends that I knew that were there, and I reached to a colleague that I haven't worked with for like I don't know 9 years or something like that, and she was able to refer me in, and um, that's kind of the same thing with you know this whole process of trying to get that first interview is that you're just trying to get that foot in the door. And so in that case, I had that connection with that other designer, and so I was able to make that quick connection. But if you don't have those connections, again, you've exhausted friends and family, um, the recruiters of the company, and now you're talking to, now you're looking at the company itself, and just kind of basically cold calling, I guess is the word, right? You're cold calling designers to see if they'll talk to you. You're just trying to get a vibe of what's it like to be on the design team or be a designer at that company, and then I guess you would ask for a referral. I find this a little uncomfortable for me. I like to have that personal connection before I would ask for that referral. But from others that I've heard, uh, they have found success with that. And so, you know, I would say if anyone reached out to me on LinkedIn and was asking me questions about AWS or Amazon or any of the previous companies I worked at, I would definitely be helpful to like or interested in helping them kind of move along. But that's my own personal uh, perspective versus I feel like other designers might be busy. So um, I can't personally recommend this one as I feel like I haven't done it myself. But as someone who would receive these messages, I would say I appreciate them. So maybe I do. Maybe I do recommend it. I don't know. Uh, I will say that I have had some people coming out of boot camps or some designers coming out of boot camps reach out to me and say that they're interested in kind of just chatting about Amazon or wherever, and then they'll just kind of like disappear. And so that's kind of weird. Like I would say, if you're gonna try to make a connection, at least try to um, continue in that pursuit, just so that you have made that positive connection, and then you know that is your I would say you've what's the word? You made your I'm a lack of words right now. You made your impression. That's what I'm thinking about. You made your first impression and then you ended it. Whereas if your first impression with the designer is, hey, I'm really interested in your role. I would really like to hear more. It's like, sure. When would you like to meet up? And then they don't, and then they never reply back. It's like, okay, well that's your first impression. Um, and that kind of actually goes to my next topic, which or my next item, which is you know, if you try to reach out friends and family, your recruiters, designers, and you're just like, whatever role company you're looking for, and you're just exhausting them all, and you feel like you haven't got any bites at all, I would say just consider the long game because impressions are what they are, right? Like you're going to be having an impression, you're going to have a first impression with a company or with any of these people, whether or not it's, that LinkedIn message or maybe you get the first call, but, or maybe you don't. I believe that the long run is still beneficial. Like I would say, don't think of yourself as like kind of failing altogether to getting inside the, to your first UX role, but think of it as the long game that, your first impression is going to be longer lasting than you think. And the reason I say this is I remember when I got my first UX role, uh, I had an interaction at a UX conference with my boss 1 year prior to me getting hired by my boss. And I don't even remember what our first interaction was, but I do remember him saying that I made a good first impression. And, a year later, he's doing random UX designer interviews at my college, and he ends up hiring me on the spot. Now, that's a rare occurrence, and I don't expect it to happen for everyone, but I will say that just thinking that like I made the effort of being somewhere a year prior just to be interacting with people, I think that goes a long way. So hopefully you don't have to play the long game, but just because you're getting a bunch of, you know, if interviews are ghosting you or if you're not able to make those connections with people, just consider, just give it some time, work on your craft. There's so much to the UX craft that's going to take a long time to be able to get somewhere where you even feel super confident about all the variety of skills, whether it's, you know, the designing portion or research or, you know, having more of a product mindset or the technical feasibility of things. Like there's so many different facets of UX design that, you can work on your craft on the side that I think only builds your credibility as a UX designer and being able to just do additional side projects or, contracting or whatever it may be, depending on your use case. So, so yeah, that's gonna be the big portion of today's stream. Um, you know, I felt like this one was a little shorter. Again, I'm gonna be doing like a little over an hour, probably at most streams, which is at least aiming for that. But this is gonna be kind of a short and sweet 30-minute one. But I just find that when you're job searching for a UX designer, just remember you don't have to do it alone. I find a lot of times where I'm trying to help my friends get into UX design, and a lot of times, you know, there is some inherent need that feels like you have to accomplish it yourself, or you have to, muster all this, motivation and be able to, you know, shine on your own. And I think there's a time and place for that in regards to your interviews. Like, you know, obviously people can't walk you through the interviews or just get you a job instantly. But I will say you don't have to do it alone. Like, think of your friends and network. All these people, like the recruiters and other designers, like we've all been there. The recruiter's role is to fill roles, and other designers, I think, at least some designers, have general interest in helping others. And so, like myself and other designers that I've talked to, just remember, like, we're people at the end of the day, and just because we work at whatever company, like, just reach out, see, like, shoot your shot, see what kind of conversation you can spin up with people, because again, a lot, back to the when I was talking about friends and family, it's in people's benefit to just refer people that they think are strong, because if we have a referral bonus for designers and I refer a designer in and I get a bonus, that's awesome. I don't need to necessarily know you, but again, there's a distinguishing factor between referring people you know and referring people that you don't know. But again, just don't feel like you have to do it yourself. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from this, and that's where I think networking plays a big part in this, because you don't want to just use networking to try to use people. You want to kind of consider it as, we're all in this together. So just don't just try to do it by yourself. Anyway, oh, it's Chris. Are you subbed to my channel? I don't even know how people. Oh, you probably following me on Twitter. I can't remember. But yeah, this is my second YouTube stream for UX design. I don't know. Let me see if I can find a timestamp on your message. I haven't looked at it. But yeah, I'm trying to get this into more routine. I'm planning to do at least one stream a week on a variety of topics, but not exactly sure how frequent this will be. But I'll definitely aim for one, and then we'll move to like 2 or 3 probably in the future. All right. Well, I'm not sure Oh, you're not on Twitter. That's probably a good thing. Twitter's a thing that's not always the most beneficial for your mental health. But yeah, I'm also trying to think about what the best time frame is for content like this. I streamed last time. It was at like 9 o'clock, 9:30 or something like that. And then today I'm trying to start like 3:30. So I'm trying to find a sweet spot for this. But 3:30 seems to work fairly well for me. Anyway, I'm actually going to be cutting stream. And again, I'm going to be doing live stream content like this so that if anyone has any sort of questions or comments, I can kind of answer them live, but I will also plan to kind of cut these up and just make them into VODs that that are just a little more digestible instead of hearing me ramble for like a 30 minutes to an hour. So try to condense this to probably like 5 to 8 minutes. Because I know my attention span is fairly low. 10 minutes starts to hit the mark where I'm kind of just like scrubbing through the YouTube channel or the YouTube video. But alrighty, well, take care everyone. We'll be back probably next week. If there's any topics that anyone is interested in, I'm going to be looking in the comments. Otherwise, I'll just try to come back next week with something else. I have to always remember YouTube streaming is always different than Twitch streaming. There's actually an end stream button on YouTube. Anyway, take care everyone. Have a good weekend.